Hi guys, what up, Viper here, and today I want to talk about the changes that I personally would really like to see happen for Illuvium Arena while we go through all these beta iterations up until we have the open beta release, right? When everything is like live on chain, everything matters. We're gonna care for leaderboard rewards probably in some sort of thing. We're gonna have tournaments. We're gonna have this whole airdrop theme and so on. So I have two major things that I would really like to see changed. One, I really don't like legendary augment betting the way it currently is, and I'm not really sure if there's a way that it wouldn't suck, from my opinion, to be honest. Like, it's just the whole issue with legendary augment betting is that you both have the same things offered, and there's usually not going to be the same quality of things offered for both players, meaning there's going to be something that is really good for one player and completely unusable for the other player. For example, one guy is playing a Revenant Inferno team and there's a Revenant or Inferno emblem offered, and the other person is not playing Revenant Inferno. Now, the only way that you have a neutral outcome in that betting phase, because those are very good for your opponent, if you bet the exact same amount of coins as your opponent, which is a range from 0 to 3. So you take a dice and you go, I don't know, 1 means 0 and 5 and 6 you reroll and you go. 25% chance you get the right one, and that's it. All this stuff about, but it's like mind games and you can think about your opponent. No, that's all bullshit. That does not exist in reality. That's some fairy tale silver player balance ideology from where I stand as, I don't know, competitive pro player persona, basically. Because in the end, it's always going to be, okay, my opponent thinks this, therefore I do this, but my opponent knows that I know that he knows. It's just essentially always going to come down to, if you as a player just take the dice, that's a very good strategy. Unless you know my opponent always does this certain thing, but then your opponent could know that you know, and so on. So like, it's just a thing where you take the dice, you roll it, and 25% it's an even outcome. You bet the same coin, same amount of coins, nobody gets anything, okay. 75% you're in a losing position, just because these legendary augments happen to appear. I think that's not a cool mechanic, and I don't really know what you could do or change or how to fix that. Maybe you could go, okay, there's like 5 things offered and you have 6 coins or something like that, and you can still only bet up to 3 on one thing. That would lessen the impact of this, right? Then, because then it's not, you can maybe even go 3 on the one thing, but then you can put some other coins somewhere else and so on. Sure, it would lessen the impact, but fundamentally it would still just be some random event that is very big in favor of one player and unfavorable for another player. I think maybe if you want to keep the legendary augments, which I think they are cool. It is really cool to have legendary augments. They are very unique effects, very powerful. It really makes a difference in your strategy. It probably opens up new lines of gameplay and so on for you. Just make it in a way that both players just get one of these things opened for themselves and they just pick 1 or 2, something like that. Maybe your opponent gets a better one than you do, sure, but at least you don't feel like you're in this position, because I think that's the worst part of it. It's not that your opponent just randomly gets something really good, it's that you feel like you're in this position and you see it and then you sit there and you're like, well, here my dice goes, and that's just a horrible feeling. And then the other one, which I think is the far bigger one, and I have no solution for that. I have some ideas, but I have no real solution for that. I think the blind positioning, like we both play the game at the same time and just play our turn, put our units, and then the map is revealed, feels really bad on a competitive player scale, essentially, at least in the current version that we have. That is the big caveat here. That's why I say, like, this is the hard one, because the legendary augment thing, I think that, like, no matter how balanced or changing the game is, like, it's always going to have the same fundamental issue that I just elaborated. So now with the positioning and the blind thing, maybe if we have all the Illuvians and we have all the traits and the augments that we have are more balanced, and there's probably some other stuff coming as well, right? Like, maybe if all of that comes together, the blind positioning thing doesn't feel as bad, because it certainly did not feel as bad back in December and January, when we could have less polarizing positionings, and they were still viable. With both like the Tsunami, Enchanter, Berserker teams, or the Arcanite teams, or Invoker teams, and so on, they all could have very maybe non-polarizing positionings. You didn't have to hard commit to one side. You didn't have to hard commit to anything. Like you could kind of be like, okay, my opponent might do this or that. Well, if I can go all in on something, is that the best strategy? I can maybe do some in-between play. For the last few months, it has always been, you have to do the all-in positioning play, and either your opponent has the one that's good or that's weak against it. There was no in between, and because it's just a 1v1, one player is going to win the turn, one player is going to lose the turn. It felt really, really bad on this competitive scale. And then the worst part of that was the whole swapping teams in between as well, right? Because all of that was essentially, I don't even take a dice, right? I took a coin, I was like, left or right. That was the competitively correct thing to do. Team swap, team comp or not, yes or no. Competitively correct thing to do. If you're playing with somebody that's like on the same knowledge level as you, on the same skill level as you, then it doesn't exist. It's like a coin toss. No matter what we want to like phrase it or change it, and that really sucks, because that is also something that then late game just mitigates all the other decisions into nil. Like you could have made a bunch of correct small plays, a bunch of correct small min-max positionings. You could have played better augments, picked better augments, maybe played the entire game plan slightly better. Well, you lost the coin toss or you won the coin toss. That is what mattered, and that made all the other things go away. I think that really sucked. I really hate that. And that is the blind positioning thing. So maybe if we have everything else in place and we have like private beta 4, if we have open beta release, testnet, right? Like all those things, there's going to be updates to Arena and balance patches and so on. Maybe that is going to make this feel less bad, and we're going to go back to, we don't need these hardcore polarizing positionings. But I'm really worried about that, because it's just been like after we've gotten better at the game, after everybody just gets better playing a few months, right? It's just been more and more towards super polarizing strategy, super polarizing positioning. And you can only counter it by doing one yourself. You could not do some like, I can beat both options my opponent has, or I can beat 2 out of 3 options my opponent has. No, it's always been take the coin, 1 or 2. And that really sucks. My idea or hope maybe could be if we have some sort of, we make one move that costs mastery points, and then your opponent makes one move, and then you make one move, then the opponent makes one move, right? Until you both have nothing left. Some like initiative-based system. Maybe you make it even a bit different, where you play units first, and after you've played the units for the turn, then you have the positioning and the like initiative thing, right? The guy that passes first, so then the other guy gets to make the last move, the next turn or something like that. Maybe that could be really cool, because then it kind of mitigates this whole thing of like every melee damage dealer is on one side, right? Because you want all of them to attack the same thing, but if you have to make like the last move, and then you probably move 1 to the other side, or you want to move 2 to the other side, it's going to be really hard to have everything on one side, because then your opponent can make moves and adjust versus it, right? So that would break a lot of these super polarizing setups, just because you cannot, like, it's just bad, right? It's bad to like full stack everything on one side. The opponent can just make like 1 or 2 last moves against that, if they can counter your setup with 1 or 2 moves. So I think that would soften a lot of the positioning, soften a lot of the matchups. And the issue would be like some turn timer thing or so, but we have pretty long turn timers. If it's just like, I don't know, 15 seconds per action or something like that, or maybe you have, I don't know, 15 seconds per action, and maybe the time carries over if you didn't use it on the last move. Turn timers don't go up that much, I think. Maybe they go even tremendously down in the earlier stages of the game. So that would be my idea or take on that, maybe. In general, like any kind of strategy game, these like card deck building games, you usually want to have like risks and payoffs, and you want to have some, like there's something to gain and something to lose of moves and of actions that you do. And you want to have a lot of those actions so people can just make a lot of small mistakes. But that is the issue that we had in the last few weeks of the arena, where essentially all the new mechanics came in, and I guess balance couldn't keep up. That's why I'm saying, like, maybe all of this could be fixed with balance. I'm not sure. Maybe it is just a fundamental problem, but I see this as a fundamental problem, where I think no matter what balance you do, it's just going to come down to these like coin tossy things, where it's like all in on one side, all in on one positioning, all in on one strategy. Because even now, something like you can counter a ramp fire by putting a ranged damage here like very much in the front line. But then if the enemy just sells the ramp fire and plays like a melee damage dealer in front of your unit, you just super hard lose the round, right? So I really wonder if there's something that could be done about this that's less like whole blind position coin flippy, because that feels like it just makes so many decisions that you can make that could have an impact just nil, because it's always this like one overreaching big thing that makes everything other outside of it irrelevant. And then I want to keep this a bit shorter, but I see a lot of ideas regarding, well, why can I not just ban something, right? Like, why can I not have this button? I do not want to be matched versus an opponent that plays ramp fire in their deck, for example. That's some idea that I've seen over the last few months. So we can go into some anecdotal reasons of like ownership, and you don't want to like have people not be able to play with the things that they bought and so on. I think the overreaching issue with that is, well, the game is completely, utterly impossible to balance if you implement something like that in a best of one leaderboard arena gameplay kind of thing, right? Because then you have to balance every single card and every single deck, every single team in mind with, okay, people can ban this, which is a counter to this, so we need another counter to the strategy. Or the strategy is just OP. But then maybe both those counters don't play the same carry unit, but they play like some same supportive units, and then people can just ban that supportive unit, and then they have no counter again. Like the very, very simple baseline idea is that I think it's like so impossible to balance the game if you just allow people to just like ban one thing. Just never be matched with somebody playing like the Rampfire line or the like a Revenant Illuvian or something like that. Completely impossible to balance. I don't think it's ever going to happen in a best of one setting. That's like a tournament mode kind of thing. That's a best of 3, best of 5. You bring multiple different teams. You can ban one of your opponent's teams. That's not a casual best of one ladder thing, and it's going to be really, really tough on just balancing anything really in that setting. I think it's almost always going to come down to just one overreaching OP thing that doesn't have a counter anymore, because you're just allowed to ban the counter, or you're allowed to ban something that's like a universal utility unit that they play, so that none of the counters work. Now, people could say, but you could just ban the OP thing. I mean, there's just going to be like a combination of two things that have like the same weakness. Also, I feel like on a gameplay side, it probably just feels not great, because then you're just going to play with scuffed teams, with scuffed versions of your teams. You're never going to have like the full power of something, because your opponent is always just going to take out some part of your team comp. So I think that's like feeling wise, I feel like it's just going to be awkward. And then the next level is it's going to be even more knowledge based and flowchart based than ever before if you implement that. Because every game in which one player knows what to ban from the opponent's team and the other player doesn't, you just immediately decide the game in that ban phase before even the first Illuvian is played. If I know, okay, I play versus this is what I have to ban, my opponent doesn't know what they have to ban from me, I won. I have not even played the first Illuvian, I have not bet Legendary Augment, I have not chosen an Augment from the selection phase thing. Nothing is done but this banning, and the game is already decided. And I think that's going to happen a lot. And in like the highest level of plays, it's just going to be, well, everybody knows what to ban from the other person. So you're just going to see the same bans every single game. So it's as if bans don't exist. And in the lower levels, so many games are just literally going to be decided before the first Illuvian is played. That's my take on that. I don't think that would be good. I don't think that would work out. But yeah, I think I've essentially had 4 topics here, right? Legendary Augments and Legendary Augment betting, the blind positioning thing, and then 2 versions of how you could ban something from opponent's team, making the games, I guess, less linear, because you don't have the same units every game, or you don't play versus the same enemy every game, and so on. So what are your guys' thoughts on this? This is like my first idea. I mean, there's like hundreds of topics that could go in here. I don't want to talk about like balance and so on. I think I'll do that in a different video, because I could have led with this. But basically, we've been through so many changes in the beta to like the fundamental gameplay things, that the first version we had, the devs essentially had a lot of time to actually balance what we were getting, right? And outside of bug fixes, it was pretty balanced. In the first December and January, we played like, well, what did we play? We played like different Enchanter versions. We played different Berserker versions. We played different Arcanite versions. We played some like fighter teams. We played some Invoker teams. There was so much that was actually playable and people played on the leaderboards. But then like all these fundamental gameplay changes came in and the balance couldn't keep up. And yeah, we went down to like more coin flippy things because maybe the amount of decks, maybe the amount of slots in your team should have been adjusted when augments became far weaker. Because we just played like 16 Illuvials or 18 Illuvials, maybe we should not have been allowed to play 16 Illuvials, right? Maybe if Illuvials are kept at 13, that would have been a better balance-wise experience then, or things like that, right? So that's why I'm gonna cover that in a different video. It's a bit longer of an outro here. And again, let me know what you guys think on that. Also, let me know what other videos you wanna see throughout April, I wanna say, because I don't think there's much going on with the arena. We have the Ascension coins and there I've covered the changes there. There's probably not gonna be too many meta changes or gameplay changes, so I'll do some fundamental stuff. Let me know what fundamental things, what fundamental topics, or maybe Illuvium ecosystem, Illuvium arena, economy topics, whatever you wanna know. I'll try to cover all of that in April, and appreciate all the feedback, appreciate the comments. Really helps a lot. See you guys in the next one.